What's going on, folks? Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about March and the progress of reselling for March 2022. Now, I want to be very frank. I'm going to be very open around all the numbers and putting it all on the table to help you understand why I look at these numbers and how they help, but also to help give you perspective, and that sometimes the numbers that we see from other people that we compared to, it's not always the best thing to do. It's better to compare to yourself. So let's dive into it. So March was average. It was a good month, but it was an average month. To give some perspective, when I think about some of the numbers for a financial year average perspective, $6,000 is that average amount that I've been doing for this financial year, which might sound like a lot. There's plenty of people doing a lot more, and there's plenty of people that aren't even near that number. A high for me is around $8,000 and a low for me is around $4,000. And that's revenue, right? That's not profit. That's not what's going back into my pocket. Average for me for profit is around $3,800. So that gives you some perspective. So let's actually have a look. How has March gone? So if I look at March, it's been a pretty solid month. Like I said, just around average or just below. We've done 185 sales, ASP being around $31.68. Margin, however, is sitting at 60%. Which is not too bad. I've had a few higher months over the last few months, but this month has come down a little lower. Cost of goods, we've spent around $620 on the items that I have sold, revenue being $5,861 with a profit of $3,520 after fees and postage. So fees was quite high this month, around $1,100, and post cost out of my own pocket was around $587. And then if we dive down a little more, you can see what's actually been selling in March, and books and DVDs and video games have been my big hitters for the month. This is sorted by profits, and as you can see, books has an ASP of around $46 in terms of per sale. DVDs and videos are sitting around that $17 in terms of ASP, and video games sitting at that $41.90 ASP as well. So it's been pretty solid. It's been a pretty good month in terms of those three categories. As you can see, I've been selling a lot of random different items. But all in all, it's been some pretty good throughput. DVDs, I've sold basically the double amount of books in order to get somewhere close to the same amount of profit. Revenue-wise, it's almost double. So some interesting facts, but this is just to help you see what I'm selling, what's selling, and it's going to be different for everyone. Next up is a running whole of life view. And, I'm tracking this from January 2021 when I first started doing this reselling journey. So it's been more than a year now. And as you can see here, March has actually been pretty consistent in terms of when we're comparing it to February, but comparing it to the rest of the entirety of the last year, it's actually been pretty solid. I mean, we're still seeing that steady growth. This is not one of those big outliers. It's an average month, as I kind of said at the start, but you can see it all for yourself on screen. If you've got any questions about this, please feel free to ask. And next up is actually a diagram or a chart of this view, so you can see what it actually looks like. And when I talk about roller coasters, this is a good example. So you can see the sales are a roller coaster, the revenue is a roller coaster, and that profit is definitely a roller coaster too. But this gives that perspective of, every month is going to be to its own. So how many items did I list for March 2022? Well, 460 items listed. I had an average daily revenue of around $189. That's averaging around 6 sales per day, and average cycle time was 58 days. That's how long it took for an item that I listed and then selling, whether it was an item that I had relisted or an item that was brand new in stock, like brand new into the store. It includes both. Now, one thing that I do like to do is reflect on the progress, reflect on, what's been happening, what's been working, what hasn't been working. And something that I do always kind of refer to myself is something called rose, thorn, and bud. And usually the roses indicate, what's working, what's a success. Usually the thorn represents a challenge, what's not working and what's being a bit of a challenge. And then you have bud, which works as an opportunity, something that I can look forward to, or something that maybe can actually come into something a bit more and it can blossom. So in terms of successes for this month, I think it's good to see that it's a consistent month. I've had some new stock coming in, and the sold ASP is actually strong. For new stock that I've been purchasing in 2022 and actually selling, it's actually been really solid, and that ASP is around $47. So I'm pretty happy with that. In terms of operating costs, which I'm going to talk about a little later, this month is actually doing a lot better compared to February. I haven't had to outlay as much expense this month, which has been solid, and it's been able to help with the bottom line. And as I said, it's been a higher ASP month compared to the previous month, just as you would have seen, only by a couple of cents, but it all counts. In terms of challenges, in terms of what's a bit of a thorn and things that are kind of keeping me up at night, they're not really keeping me up at night, but just keeping me thinking is sourcing. I haven't been sourcing bigger deals at the moment. It's just been a lot of op shops and thrifting and things like that. So that's been a bit of a challenge. I haven't been able to get any of those big hauls or anything that's going to be a bit of a game changer, which I had back in October, that video game haul. So still working on a few networks and a few opportunities. I did have a few return cases and other little issues in the store this month as well, which I think brought down some of that traffic, but all things considered, I've still done a pretty consistent month. And then the other thing is I've ended March, the final week of March, going into isolation, and had to put the store just at the end here at March into basically time away, which does deter a few people as well. So that's been a bit of a challenge. In terms of opportunities, well, we're in a fresh month now, going into April. It's a new quarter, so new season. So it's a chance to adjust and try new things. As I said, being in isolation for the first start of April is going to give me a chance to try some different things, clean up the store, clean up inventory, do some stock take, and see if I can adjust and find new ways of doing work, right? And this is similar to what we had to go through during lockdown. So I'm excited for it, trying to be positive and trying to stay focused on what I can do versus not what I can't do, because it's out of my control. So one thing that I'm very, very bold about and want to be very, very frank about is the numbers, right? And I talk about this all the time, different perspectives, and I want to show you all different versions of that perspective. eBay 90-day view, which you can see on screen at this point of time of me filming this, it's at $22,000. Now that's pure revenue. That includes what people paid and paid postage for. Whereas a running view, which is the view that I usually show here, which is, you know, my revenue, and then after it, eBay expenses such as fees and postage, this is the profit that you've got. But the real key numbers that you should be tracking is the business view, or your accounting view, and this is after all expenses. And this is, as you can see on screen, I've got revenue of $5,861, and then profit is actually only $2,409, and that's after all expenses, which we're going to touch on in a second, as you can see here. So for March, when I talk about additional expenses, we're talking about new stock, the cost outlay for that new stock, marketing supplies, mailing and shipping supplies, any rent, storage expenses and things like that, any overhead expenses, things that pop up that you might have to do, refunds and things like that. So that is all the additional costs, even fuel, even going out and having to do those kind of things, they all cost money. And this is that accounting view. This is that business view that I think is really important that you understand. Now, March has actually been pretty solid. It's been a lot better than February. Didn't have such an outlay of costs, for additional expenses or additional mailing expenses or shipping supplies and things like that. So these are all things to factor in and just think about. And I wanted to share that perspective because I think it's relevant. The next one is then cash flow. And the way I like to manage my cash flow is using a little system called Profit First. If you haven't checked out the book, go do it. I guarantee you it will change your perspective about everything. And now this perspective here that you can see, this is not purely the 100% accurate view that I have right now, because I have changed the splittings. But when I started it, I was doing a 40% into operating expenses, 40% into owner's pay, 5% going to profits, which is basically like a quarterly bonus, and 15% tax, which is saving it for when I have to pay tax. Now, a lot of this I'm not going to harp on. I've got a whole video on this. If you want to go check it out, go check it out, right? And this helps make sure that I've got money allocated for the different areas of the business. And it helps you see where you're bleeding as well. So that's something to consider. If you want to see a full video, go check it out. So that is essentially March 2022. It's been an interesting month, as I said. Not bad, not necessarily a big banger either. It's just been average. It's been good enough to keep the things going in the right direction. It'll be interesting to see what happens in April. Also going into school holidays, there'll be more people out and about. There's Easter, so some people do buy gifts and things like that. So just trying to see what's been happening in the market as well. Obviously in the world, there's a few things happening with inflation, with war and all that jazz. So managing all those things at the same time and trying to make sure that I am providing stock that is for my customers and that they want that kind of stock, whether it's repeat buyers or new people coming into the store too. So lots of things to consider. Don't want to overthink it. I'm looking forward to April, new opportunities, new chances. If you've got any questions from anything that I've discussed here, really focusing on the numbers today, please ask. I'm more than happy to have the conversation. And if you want to go check out some of the other videos, I do weekly videos on all this kind of thing. But I would encourage you to go check and go test your skills when it comes to picking, flipping, and making some profits. I've released a new kind of video which talks all about this, and it's a bit of a trivia game. You can test your own skills. Otherwise, if you've got any questions, do let me know, and you have a wonderful day. Cheers.